Hello, everyone. The current time is 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are NextWaveSTEM, and we are really excited to have each and every one of you with us for today's webinar, How to Teach STEM Remotely. So one thing I will start by saying is, in addition to the thank you, we understand. We can imagine that some of us are already approaching or have already been living in a state of burnout with respect to online learning generally, not to mention when you keep our students engaged with STEM learning. We understand, we feel your pain, and we're going to be looking forward to really figuring out the best way to help you and also not overstretch your time, your resources, or just your plain old sanity. So we're here to help first and foremost. And we're hopeful that today's webinar is something that's going to be empowering for you as educators and really encourages you to continue in that passion for educating your students, whether there are littles or if there are middle schoolers or high schoolers. We're really excited to be a part of that journey and a part of that mission with you. Just a few ground rules before we begin. I will say again, we are in webinar mode today. That means that we won't be able to see your face, we won't be able to hear your voice, but the chat and the Q&A functionality is open. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring the chat. My colleague, Sugandi Chigani, who is a part of our school partnerships team, will also be in the chat to monitor the messages that are coming in as well. So in between the two of us, we will be able to give you resources on the fly and make sure that your questions get answered. In addition, for our Illinois teachers, this is a professional development session. That means that you will be receiving 1 hour of credit for your attendance here today. The paperwork to follow up and make sure that that hour gets logged will be coming in the follow-up email. If you've got any questions about that or anything coming in through any of our emails, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is really easy, Desmond at nextwavestem.com, and you'll see that email again. So now that we got the boring stuff out the way, let's go ahead and dig right in. First, I want to talk a little bit about who NextWaveSTEM is, why it is we do what we do. More than anything, NextWaveSTEM believes that we need some problem solvers. And the reason we need some problem solvers is because we have some truly massive problems that need solving. Before there was a global pandemic, there were issues of food safety and making sure that we had breathable air and getting plastic out of the ocean and dealing with traffic here in our Chicago-based area or dealing with clean water just across the lake in Flint, Michigan. It is endemic in the world in which we live that we have some massive problems that need solving. And we believe that technology is going to be a huge part of that solution. But we can't get there if we don't have that critical mass of scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematics. And the statistics have shown that in the US, that's been a struggle. We don't have enough qualified and really well-trained STEM professionals to get the job done. We want to see that change. And the way we change that is by empowering you, the teacher. We believe that we can get our kids hands-on with STEM at a really early age. NextWave STEM courses go K through 2, or not K through 2, but K through 12. And we believe that your young students can learn about aerodynamics, can learn about computer science, can learn robotics and flying autonomously with drones and 3D printing and a myriad of other really powerful emerging technologies. We believe that you can learn it too, that any phobias that you have about emerging technology can be dispelled, and that when you get that kind of confidence in the curricula in your training, in your technology, you can pass that learning on to your students. More than anything, and I say this often, we want to see our children no longer be just consumers of technology. We want to see them be creators of technology. And as they create technologies, as they create engineering solutions, both products and processes, they are going to be solving some of the huge problems that we're facing right now. I'm really excited for the opportunity to be a teacher of one of these students who will fix climate change. And I know that's a lofty goal, but I really believe that as the next generation, our students can do it. And we just need to continue to empower them to be able to do that. So in today's training, now that I've gotten on my lofty soapbox, I think I can step down a little bit. For today's training, we want to talk specifically about what we're dealing with right now, which is this new turn towards distance learning and remote learning. Um, it is something that I don't think any of us as educators would have imagined even 4 months ago that we were going to be doing, meeting with our students almost exclusively in the online space and finding instructional models that work really well. But now that we're here, we're going to do what we've gotten very good at as educators, which is being problem solvers in our own right. We want to explore some effective instructional models to provide hands-on learning. I think at first glance that may seem counterintuitive or maybe close to impossible now that we're at distance, but there are some ways to really go about it and make it effective. And then secondly, we want to talk about what our options are with respect to curricula, um, and even think about the difference in applying our instruction to a distance learning model versus a remote learning model. We're going to do some defining, and then we're going to talk about, okay, what can I actually do for my students? Throughout the course of the chat, I'm going to be mentioning some things. So Gundy is going to be putting in some resources as well. And you will be receiving a copy, both the slide deck from today's chat and the recording from today's chat as well. So if you miss something, don't worry. You don't have to scroll down notes furiously. You'll be able to refer to this recording after the fact. So the first thing we have to do is think about where we are at. If we want to understand where we are and we want to understand where we're going, rules of navigation say we need to understand where we've been. So we're going to do a little bit of compare and contrast in traditional learning, what we've all been trained in, what we've been doing for quite some time, versus this new scenario, this new situation we all find ourselves in. When we think about traditional learning, this is the stuff we know very well. Going in 7:30 to 4 o'clock each day to your campus, you've got your schools, you've got your schoolyards. There's a really robust school structure where students have repetition and know what to expect when it comes to passing, even between classes, but what they're going to face in the classroom. There's commuting, whether or not our students are walking to school or if they're doing the traditional carpool or if they're taking the bus to school, they understand that there's going to be some time where they relocate from where they live to come to the place where they learn. So there's already in our students' minds, and in some cases our minds, is bias towards where learning actually happens. And then when we think about our extracurricular activities that are centered around our school, it's biased to the actual work day, the societal way that we work. In a lot of cases, what we do after school, if that's STEM club, robotics club, if you're working in sports, all those things are set up in such a way where that allows our, our adults to continue to persist in their workday. Um, when we think about formatting, it's a lot of instruction. We're standing in front of our students. We're in with our students. We're able to see them and speak to them. That social emotional learning becomes very powerful because we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of other individuals we work with of different ages and different learning styles and different focuses when we think about our instructors. But the goals are pretty consistent between traditional and digital learning, something we'll talk about more. we're teaching, and for a lot of us, we're teaching with respect to standard alignment or vocational preparation. We want to make sure that our children, our next generation of workers, is prepared to enter into that workforce. That is why we teach. We're transmitting skills for workforce preparedness. Um, Digital learning has turned some of those things on their ear. The place of learning and the place of living have now been merged into one in ways that for a lot of our students have been divorced. Um, they're working from their parents' offices, from their bedrooms, from dinner tables. Honestly, anywhere where there's a device, Wi-Fi, and space, we see students that are going to be working from there. The format is different. We're going to see some blended learning where there's going to be time where they're physically working with an asset, even if that asset is digital, and time where there'll be instruction or even pre-recorded instruction. The models are going to be mixed together. There's a huge increase in screen time every Sunday. My phone does this little thing where it says, hey, check out your stats for the week. And every week I swipe it away because I don't want to know how much time I've spent this week looking at that little screen. When it comes to our instruction and how we're able to touch base with students, we're checking in through chats, through emails, through video calls, through our learning management system, if that's Google Classroom or Moodle or Schoology, whatever that might be. Um, we have now really removed that space, that intimate learning space that we had previously, and we have to think differently now about what our learning experiences look like with students because of that. But the goals are still the same. We want to align our instruction with rigorous standards, those things that we want to assess and build our students in. We want to make sure that they're getting real world skills when we think about what the workplace is going to demand. And we're building holistic learners as well, focusing in those 21st century skills. So a great place to start is at the beginning. Where do we start? We want to think about what our learning objectives are when we teach STEM. Previously, it might have been thinking about, okay, my STEM course, emerging technology like robotics or drones becomes an addendum or because another way to focus on those foundational goals, whether that's NGSS standard alignment or 21st century skills. We want to really think deeply about our ability to continue to support those goals or think about what specific in those goals need to change based on a new learning environment. And this is something that a lot of you all as educators have already been doing since the beginning of this crisis. You have been working together to evaluate these things. In a lot of ways, we're just here to support the work that you're continuing to do. You're working with your team members, your other educators, your staff, your administration to make sure that your teaching methods are similar, that one class's Zoom experience isn't wildly different than another class's Zoom experience, that there can still be some kind of repetition and expectation for your students, even though in certain places, situations seem to change day by day. And in that way, you're also taking advantage of the fact, something that I think is a huge opportunity of sharing those ideas across your instructional team. Something that may be working in your colleague's algebra class may apply really, really well to what you're doing in an English class. Someone may see what you're doing in your applied technology class of learning about drones and coding that will work really, really well in their sociology class. So there's going to be this exchange of ideas that continues to happen. And all the while, you're building up towards these life goals that are so, so essential. In some situations, we can imagine that assessment for all and purposes is shot. Um, Testing is fractured when we think about what states require and what's going to happen with the rest of this year and going into the fall. Some places are still trying to do testing. We believe that the most important thing is that you build your students learning skills and their life skills. You all already know the 4 C's, the critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. STEM supports that and does a really good job of supporting that. What we also want to build into our instruction is those life skills, thinking about ways that we can build flexibility, leadership, initiative, productivity, and social skills as well. This can be a little bit challenging in the distance space, but if we're actually really intentional about our instructional model and method, it becomes a powerful tool for us. Once again, the goal is keeping our kids competitive as much as we can. Can we transfer the skills? So now that we are kind of like grounded and rooted in why it is we're doing remote learning, distance learning, we want to differentiate and talk about something that sounds very similar, sounds the same, but is actually a little bit different. And depending on your situation, depending on your institution, even depending on your students' technology capabilities and your own technology capabilities, there may be some different formats that work for you when you think about distance or remote learning. So these two terms that sound very similar but are actually different. Um, Distance learning, once again, prioritizes a blended style of learning where there's going to be a hands-on component. The learning is going to be differentiated with regard to modality. Some things are going to be audio-visual. Some things may be kinesthetic when we think about actually learning through physical sciences. Some things will require some media skills if it's them recording and submitting video. And some of them are going to challenge our basic computing skills. If it's word processing or crunching data through something like Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. We're going to see a different set of modalities that come into place. Distance learning also has the ability to leverage physical things around them. We'll talk a little bit more about that more in depth because the big question mark we often get is, okay, how can I get my students hands-on with technology? There are some ways to do that that becomes something that's not a huge barrier through what you might have already had in the classroom. Distance learning also maintains the integrity of having our students actually working together. So for the components where there's live instruction, it is going to be extremely beneficial that our students are able to communicate in dialogue, whether that's through Google Sheets or through the group chat in your video instruction feature, whether that's Zoom or Google Meet or even Skype if you're at school that's using Skype. And we want to take advantage of that ability to continue to share ideas and even prepare for some things with respect to digital citizenship. Um, Distance learning, kind of the silver lining here is that we are getting prepared for future disruptions. Um, COVID-19 is terrible, full stop. But it may not be the last time where we can imagine where we'd have a major disruption in the learning opportunities for our students because of something similar. Or we may have just seen the end of the traditional snow day as we know it. We may have other remediation options where physical access to school becomes a challenge. But the really critical thing is that distance learning allows for easier differentiation. We can create tracks for learning where students are progressing through different skills at different speed or showing proficiency at different rates. That becomes something that using the technology in our planning through curriculum allows us to work through that in a more robust way. Remote learning is a lot more, just like it says, remote. It's really go at your own pace. Very LMS friendly. So if you've planned out your complete semester, 10 weeks or 12 weeks or 8 weeks, however long your semester might be, if you've got your assignments planned out, you can comfortably rely on your students in some situations to move through at the pace that's good for them through the technology systems that you have. One thing I will say about remote learning is that our ability to assess our students' skills become limited because of the way that we can program in and run assessments and even our ability to grade those assessments. Now, what is actually a very exciting aspect of remote learning is that we can actually, depending on the class size, individually tailor our students' learning. If we know where our students are at, if we know what their focus is, this becomes an even more granular level of differentiation that we can do based on what we know about our students previous to the crisis. But in addition to giving us the pacing options, the technology integration, and the differentiation options, both distance and remote learning give us this ability to prepare for future disruptions. It's really about shifting the paradigm and what our instructional style lets us do. So what do we think is a really tremendous opportunity here while we're teaching at distance? This is the part where I'm actually gonna be quiet. I'm gonna shut up for a minute, and our chat is open. I wanna hear from you as instructors, as you've been teaching remotely, as you've been preparing to teach remotely. What are some things that you found as actual positive benefits for yourself or for your students while you get ready to make this huge transition? They want to share these different experiences and different ideas. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you share with us what is at least one opportunity that you've seen while you've been preparing for a distance learning. Francesca, Johnny on the spot, learning about Zoom and having students comfortable with it. That is a really, really powerful lesson that we've all gotten with respect to technology and video conferencing. I've done almost 24 of these webinars, and it becomes really, really interesting how much you can learn about a tool if you just continue to use it. I think that's life in general. The more you use a tool, the better you get with it. Joycey, more use of technology. Yes, both for ill and good, we have been seeing much more technology being used. Oh, Carmela brings up a great point. Because learning and for some of our parents working is now happening in the same space, those things get intermeshed. We see some really interesting things where our employers have to remember that they work with human beings. So you're going to have kids yelling in the back of a conference call. In the same way, we're going to have parents participating hands-on with the learning of their students. It is so incredible whenever I see that happen. I love it. We have Jennifer, learning how to utilize technology, finding more creative ways to use it. Also seeing to the lives of each other. Yes, really, really good. Oh, we have another Jennifer. Once we get established with our distance learning, our flow improved as to work assigned and time to complete it. This is going to be a pedagogical game changer. How do we get into the understanding of how our students, whatever age level they're at, are actually going to be able to move through their work? How do our expectations change as we learn more and more how to effectively assess what is the actual skill growth and cognitive growth that we're building in with our students? We had some data on this before when it comes to actual peer-reviewed, good foundational science. We're going to have tons of this kind of data and learning going forward so that we can continue to build things that actually work for students at a distance. Really, really good observation. Yeah, Jennifer says her cat jumps on the keyboard sometimes in the middle of lessons. That's going to bring a smile to everybody's face. I haven't seen anyone who's gotten mad yet to see the cat jump into the video call. Oh, Carmela, we're forcing teachers to embrace technology as an instructional tool where we're not using it before. Absolutely. There's no way around it. One thing that I'm excited about is while we are doing it out of necessity, I'm hoping that it encourages our educators who may not have had to use technology before to rediscover a love for educational technology or just discover it in the first place. We know that there are outside pressures, there are different competing for lack of better words, interests when it comes to educational technology sometimes, but we also believe that it can create amazing experiences, both for students and teachers. Yeah, this is a really amazing stuff here. There's some really, really powerful opportunities that you all are capitalizing on as educators. So we're really excited about what comes next when we think about hands-on STEM. So at NextWaveSTEM, we're excited because we love to take the best of both approaches when it comes to remote learning and distance learning. And there are some key tenets that we hold in all that we do in NextWaveSTEM. NextWaveSTEM, we started off in the traditional space. And traditionally, we are live in front of our students. That's an instructor bringing technology to the school, or even with our school partnerships who are investing in their own technology. That's us also bringing our live instruction and using what the school has. If our school has the robots and this person with robots, we'll teach our courses on robotics with your robots. Or if you need the robots to come with us and leave with us, we do that as well. We're doing that in the in-school space during school time. We're doing that after school time. And something that's been really exciting for us is to move into the space where we were selling curricula. We were actually licensing curricula and training you as educators to teach that curricula. And that's something that we're continuing to do to make it available for schools. But as we've shifted now, we found that we can take a lot of things that we've seen both during school time and after school time, and even training our teachers and meld that into an approach that works really well. So the first part of that approach, very, very powerful, is blended instruction. And when we think about blended instruction, we're thinking about doing more things than just looking at the screen. For us, that means that we've got to get some kind of physical asset also into our students' hands. In our robotics course that we're teaching remotely, that means making actual robots available for schools and for students to purchase so that they can actually build and program their robot in addition to our remote instruction. If the students, however, are unable to get that robot for whatever reason, if the resources just aren't there, we're also really sensitive to that too. So we make virtual coding and virtual instruction of the robot available as well. That way, we really try to close that equity gap of what actual physical resources can get to students. And the same thing is true in our coding with drones course. You can actually get the physical drone to code and fly, or you can fly the drone digitally. The same thing is true in our 3D printing course. You can get the 3D printer and actually print objects, or we can just focus on the digital design. We want to change up the way students learn because we know students have different learning styles, but we also want them to learn different tools, whether it's coding with the robot or coding with the drone, both of those done via drag and drop block coding, or really powerfully learning to do 3D design in a 3D printing course. We don't want them filling out worksheets. We don't want them typing up papers. We don't want them filling reflections or even making videos. We want to shift their minds to doing something that requires more creativity and a different focus than what they were looking at on their screen previously. The second thing is that we believe in integrating and getting as much feedback as you can from your learning management system. Something that's actually beneficial to you as an educator is that your students, all of your students, are digital natives. That means that they're really, really good at going on their computers and checking in to get their assignments, to exchange information, and to navigate through a UI. Oh, I'll put up that for 3, to navigate a UI in ways that we did not learn natively. If you need to give feedback on a piece of code that a student has submitted to you, or you need to get feedback on a reflection that a student has done, they're good. And for you, that can be as simple as pulling up your webcam, recording a 1-minute video, submitting it to Google Classroom, submitting it to Google for your student, or submitting it to Moodle for your student, and they're all ready to go in that back and forth with you. This is also a really critical opportunity for you to think about digital citizenship. We're changing the rules of the role when it comes to the way that we interact with each other in a learning setting. That turns you from not just an instructor, but also a digital moderator. We know that when we come to school, there are ways that we do speak to our classmates and ways that we don't speak to our classmates. We have expectations for the way that we pay attention and engage in the physical classroom. We have expectations for the ways that we even communicate when we need to leave the classroom, say to go to the restroom. And there are new paradigms of ways of thinking about that in the digital space. We already have seen the memes of people taking pictures of themselves and hanging them in front of the webcam so that they still appear to be engaged to you on the other side of the computer screen. We need to make sure that our students are being kind to each other in those digital chats, and we want to make sure that they're sharing information securely. Those are lessons in and of themselves in teaching students how to be students in the 21st century. We don't want to take that for granted, especially since that's something that we have to learn ourselves. I guarantee you that this crisis in digital teaching should become an opportunity where there are less people being awful on social media, because they've learned how not to be awful on social media because they had to learn digitally. They had to learn digitally. They couldn't get away from it. They had to learn it. It's a part of their curriculum. So that's something that we really want to see more and more teachers take advantage of. Thirdly, we want to differentiate. We want to find ways to make different learning speeds and different mobilities and different kind of physical applications, different technologies available to our students. That's why NextWaveSTEM diversifies our technology. We're not a robotics company. We're not a 3D printing company. We're not a drones company. We are a technology company. So for our students who have no interest in drones whatsoever, or even for our younger students who are physically scared of drones, robotics may be the better way for them to go. For our students who have access to a 3D printer or have aspirations in art and digital design, the 3D printing course is perfect. We have ways to think about what's going to work best for our students, and we can assign courses and access our curricula accordingly. This is also a perfect time for me to just pause and mention that in addition to receiving a copy of today's webinar and the slide deck from today's webinar, you will also be receiving a link to sign up for our actual curricula. That means that you'll have access to it for free. You can go in there, try it out, see what you like, see what you don't. That's something so that you'll have an additional resource for online learning as well. So we've come this far, getting to a point now where we can talk about the nitty-gritty of instructional approaches. What are those things that we do at NextWaveSTEM that really make teaching effective for our students in the classroom? I'm going to pull from some general examples here, but I'll also be able to speak really specifically about things that we do in our lesson design. At NextWaveSTEM, we bring the beauty of the STEM that we can do hands-on online through 3 steps. We encourage discussion. That means live instruction with your students and with you there being able to share ideas, but not just through the modality of them watching your camera, but them in breakouts as well. The second thing that we do to encourage hands-on learning is that we love using everyday materials. That becomes really, really powerful because while they might not have access to emerging technologies that you might have had in your classroom, all your robots are still at school, your 3D printer may be at school, we can actually leverage some of the things they have available, household items, to really still hit those learning goals. And thirdly, we also do the live instruction. If students don't have the technology, our instructors do. You as an instructor might have the technology. So we want to guide them in such a way where they can follow along live with you in the instruction. Just got a question here, and we'll take some time to answer live. What are all the subjects that are covered in our curricula? Right now, we have K through 2 curriculums uh, in airplanes and drones, and also in computers and AI. Our K through 8 curriculums focus on robotics, drones, and 3D printing, and our high school curricula focus on drones and 3D printing. So that's something that we've been doing now for a couple of years, literally a couple, 2 years. And we are constantly working on updating and expanding those curricula and technologies as well. The focus is on learning how to use those technologies, but also hitting and supporting some of those next generation science standards as well. Good question. So now that we've talked about kind of those three aspects that we pull out, just going to back up one slide, encouraging discussion, using everyday materials and doing live demonstrations. One thing that I want to also discuss is this paradigm through which we move through actual instruction that we break down into our three phases: pre the lesson, during the instruction, and post the lesson. In NextWaveSTEM, pre-lesson instruction becomes really, really powerful because what fate is your students having access to the technology independent of you as the educator. That means that we're going to share the app with the student ahead of time before we get into the live instruction. That means that if we're making the physical technology available, we're going to have that physical technology shipped out and delivered before live instruction starts. We encourage our students to get hands-on, open the box, try putting it together. It's not a formalized Friday assignment. We want you to play around with it. Are we concerned with you breaking it? No. Are we concerned with you using it unsafely? Not particularly. Are we concerned about you being in a situation where you're going to get hurt? No. The technology that we use at NextWaveSTEM is technology that is safe to use at home. It's nothing, even the drone, it is nothing that is actually going to cause injury to your students. So that way, we want them to be curious and exploring. They can read about the actual ways the technology works. If they have a capability, many of them won't, they'll be able to build the robots or get the drone flying in the air. That's something that actually accelerate your learning through your goals in your course. It also will cause some things to happen where differentiation will be necessary, because for our students who may not be curious in that particular technology, they may not jump into it in the same way that your students who are curious are. But on the other side of that coin, now you have opportunities for student leadership in your course. You have students that are more adept and some of them that will be experts in the technology ahead of time, and they become resources. So you no longer are sitting as the sage on the stage in some of these situations. That is really, really valuable to have, and becomes another learning opportunity for your students and life skills for those who are leaders, and becomes an opportunity now for your students to learn from each other and not just from you. Extremely, extremely valuable opportunity with your students there. And when we talk about the pre-lesson instruction, getting the technology in their hands, the example that I pull from is from our 3D printing course, where we use 3D design cloud-based software called Tinkercad. Tinkercad has an option, and you can learn more about this if you join me on Thursday in our How to Teach 3D Printing Remotely webinar. Tinkercad has the option to actually allow you to design with household items. If there are paper towel rolls and toilet paper rolls, you remember all that toilet paper you went out and hoarded to buy? I hope you save those cardboard rolls as well, because they become things with which we can design. And we can actually get hands-on with 3D design technology to use those physical objects to design apparatus to build later on. That's where we're merging some emerging technology here with those household items. And this is something that's free for them to sign up for, and they can do on their own, completely independent from you, or actually um, just wait until they're working with you in your class. It integrates natively into Tinkercad in the classrooms or into Google Classroom. This is an amazing opportunity for your students to really learn more and more and more about the tool. But it also puts a little bit of onus on you as an instructor to learn about the tool as well. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see some links here. And when you get a copy of the slide deck, these links are live clickable links onto Tinkercad where you can design objects, but also into Thingiverse, My Mini Factory, and Instructables, where you can actually find repositories of digital items that your students will be able to design and tinker with and change themselves. Really, really powerful situation for your students before instruction has ever even began. The second phase of our instruction is thinking about what's happening live during the instruction. That means that we want to demonstrate, be hands-on physical with the technology. If we're building the robot, we are going to have to become a little bit of camera people and make sure that our robot is visible and that it can be seen as we're instructing, guiding our students through building the robot or coding the robot. There will be some situations where our students might not have access to be able to stream their instruction to the classroom. We know that technology can be a challenge. Wi-Fi access is not equitable all over the place, and getting a good, strong Wi-Fi signal is really difficult for some of our students. Pre-recorded instruction, that blended instructional style, becomes something that's available as well. While they no longer have access to you as an instructor alive for that direct feedback, what they do have is a resource that they can rewind and watch as much as they want to, or as much as they need to try to figure out that instruction. And then they can correspond you off of a live instructional setting to get clarification. And some of that will also involve what you've been doing before, which is reaching out to third-party resources. You might not be the master at building the robot, but you might have found the perfect YouTube video to explain it. Share that with your students and allow that to be a resource as well. But during this time, there's independent work that's going to be happening during the instruction as well. Having you be the talking head, even if it is guiding them through hands-on coding, with block-based drag and drop coding, or building and working with a specific piece of equipment, only works so much. There's time where you should pause and take a step back and let them work individually or in groups to work through challenges as well, and then do group feedback. That is a little bit more unwieldy when you think about what happens in the traditional classroom space, because we have technology that triggers those interactions, that back and forth, but that also becomes, in a lot of ways, more equitable for some of our students whose voices aren't amplified as much. We can actually control the talk time and the flow of information, the flow of communication in more robust ways. And I'm going to encourage all of us as educators to learn, once again, learn more and more about our tools. We're on Zoom right now, and I know how to screen share and screen share effectively. You all have learned how to screen share, but also learn how to use your annotation tools, your whiteboard tools. Programs like AWW, ChemDraw, or LiveText have the ability for you to overlay annotation. Some of you were using the digital projectors to be able to do annotation on top of documents or share your screens before in the classroom. This becomes a natural progression out of those skill sets. So continue to build your tools that way as well. But we also think about the third portion of the instructional process, which is the post-lesson instruction. And this is actually, relatively speaking, the easiest part of this process. You have access to your online forms in your LMS. It could be Google Forms if you're using Google Classroom. Those allow the ability to do assessment, but just basic feedback. That way we can see how well our students are retaining information, but we can also do a guided exchange of how the lesson went, even if it's as simple as, I felt great about this lesson, I was completely bored during this lesson, or I had no idea what happened in this lesson. We're able to have really direct understanding of what's going on. And if our students do something that we know our students will do, hey, how'd you like the lesson? And they hit you with the 2 words, it's fine. Then we can dig in some more. Hey, how'd you really like the lesson? Let's get more descriptive of what's going on. That it can become a little bit more time intensive on you as an educator, but it's important to find the flow for what will really work for you. So here comes this big question. How can NextWaveSTEM help you? What are the things that we can do to help smooth your transition onto distance learning and remote learning, or the blend of those two, given that we have to change our instructional style? Well, the first thing you're already doing, which is accessing our professional development. We are going to be doing professional development throughout the summer. It really doesn't throughout the summer. We have dates that are scheduled until the 4th of July, and we will most likely have dates extending beyond the 4th of July, because we know this is going to be a continual transition that you're making as educators. We don't know what the fall looks like even standing at today, but we do want to be prepared for any eventuality. So these PD sessions are going to continue to be here to support you and help you get to that place where you can be more confident in your ability in teaching STEM throughout the course of the school year, the rest of this school year, and thinking about the next school year. For our schools and our parents, I know I've mentioned this a little bit before, but speaking about it here, we are doing remote and distance learning ourselves. And we do that in both the hands-on and the online, no technology formats. When we think about our hands-on format, that means that you can come and register with us and sign up with us right now in courses where your students will receive a robot and will receive live instruction from our instructors in STEM, robotics, drones, and 3D printing. For those of our schools and parent partners who are not interested in receiving that technology, for whatever reason, that's fine. We can focus specifically on our certified STEM instructors leading through the online training, through online instruction in those same technologies. So that's something that we're going to continue to support our educators and our students in. Reach out to my colleague, Segundi at nextwavestem.com, and she'll be able to connect you with more information and get you going along that process as well. But we also don't want to be remiss in letting you know that we are prepared to be flexible with what you need. That means that our programs, everything we've talked about today, is focused online, but we have our offline options, in-person options with you as well. Our courses we have designed from the beginning from the online setting. And that means in the fall, if you're looking for ways to explore being live in front of your students with STEM, we have options available for you. Once again, airplanes and drones, computers and AI, coded with the drones, intro to robotics, design for 3D printing. We have courses in these emerging technologies that if you're in the Chicagoland area, we can come in and do your live instruction during school time and out of school time. And if you're further away, we can license that curriculum to you and train you to deliver that curriculum. Whenever it is we can physically train. And if you're really far out, we can do that train digitally so that you can deliver that instruction live. We want to make sure that whatever your particular need is, we can be set up to meet that. So we've covered a lot, kind of hit you with a bit of a fire hose, and we've gotten now towards the 50-minute mark on our webinar. So I want to take a second, because I know I've hit you with a lot of information. answered a couple of questions, but we know that you may have some more. The chat and the Q&A function is completely open for any questions that you might have. So I'm going to shut up again for a little bit and take your questions now. And there is no such thing as a bad question. Oh. Segundi, keeping me honest here. Segundi posted a question. When is our next webinar and what is it on? Our next webinar is Thursday, May 21st at 2 o'clock Central Time, how to teach 3D printing remotely. This webinar was really focused on the general ways in which you can bring STEM courses remotely to your students. We're going to be focused really in a more granular way in the capabilities with which your students can interact with 3D printing. Really exciting because that's something that students really didn't know that they could do, and it's something students as young as second grade can get into and get some really great experience in. So I'll be conducting that webinar as well for those of you who have never done any 3D printing yourselves. That's a great webinar to learn more about capabilities and play with some really cool stuff. Oh, got a question here. Are all the products available to review on the NextWaveSTEM website? Yes, they are. If you go to our website, www.nextwavestem.com, almost all of you, I imagine, have been there at some point. You'll be able to see our full product listing. Got a question. What has been our most popular webinar so far? Oh, that is a really good question. I would say that our most popular webinar so far has been that question of how do we even bring the STEM programs to our schools and organizations. It's more about how do we engage our communities, what's the capabilities that we have with respect to really getting our parents, getting our administrators, getting our community members, whether it's neighbors with our schools or the local alderman or city council member. How do we get them invested in bringing STEM to the local school and what that can do for our actual community? That's something that we saw quite a number of people on, and that's something that we'd love to have more conversation with you as an educator as well, if you're interested in bringing STEM to your school. Oh, really got a really good question here. What is something that we recommend for the pre-K crowd, pre-K and K through 2 products? So for our pre-kindergarten students, I am a huge fan of, in our NextWave STEM curriculum, airplanes and drones, primarily because it's a hands-on way to communicate scientific concepts, but also dispel their fear of drones as being something that's just a toy, something that's small, that can't hurt me. We build the understanding more and more of drones as a tool as opposed to being a toy. So we're building up good habits and a really healthy relationship with technology, even from a young age in our students. Huge fan. For our pre-K students, Ozobots. Ozobots is a coding platform with a small robot. I love Ozobots because your students do not need to read. It's all symbols-based, arrows, shapes, communicating that idea really foundationally and fundamentally, that robotics and programming, coding is just a way to give an instruction to a machine. If our students understand that that's what they're doing when they code. They have a foundation of why they will learn to code in the first place. If I want to communicate with a machine and get a machine to do what I want it to do, more than anything, I need to learn how to code, how to write and speak a language that the machine can actually understand. And Ozobots is a great place to start with that. Really, really good question. I'll pause a little bit here because we may have some other really good questions. I'm going to clear out my question queue. Oh, good. My colleague Segundi also recommended Osmo, and I agree. Osmo is another great way to engage young students. Some of you may be familiar with Ozobots. We also recommend Osmo. And for our students who are not necessarily in the pre-K age group, but I would say those who are pretty advanced first and second graders, I would also vouch for snap circuits. I know my colleague Segundi has got some familiarity with snap circuits. Really great way to get young students involved, learning about actual programmatic knowledge, some ideas in electricity and electrical circuits as well. It's a really, really good way to get your students involved and engaged. Oh, and before I forget, for our students who love Legos, who love building in 3D space, Tinkercad becomes really good for that. I'll show off on Thursday a little way that we can integrate Lego into our 3D design space using Tinkercad. But if you Google experience with Google and Lego, that brings up a digital Lego design space as well. So for our students who are like stuck inside and really, really want to play with their Legos, that's another way to do that. These are excellent questions. And Segundi just dropped another link into our chat for our STEM book. That's ages 4 through 8. Really encourage you to check that out as well if you're working with younger learners. Yeah, at NextWaveSTEM, we're not just gonna recommend our own products, but anything that will continue to help your students grow into STEM. They're really passionate. However you do it, get the job done. Well, I do believe that is it for our questions today. So once again, thank you so much for joining us at NextWaveSTEM. We would love to connect with you via social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on Instagram. We're not on TikTok. I have been saying for the last 2 months that we might get there. I don't know. We will, but when we do, we'll put that logo up here as well. If you need to reach out to me, my email is desmond@nextwavestem.com. I am the program coordinator, so I'd love to get into the weeds with you more about any of our technology or our curricula. I've had a hand in writing quite a bit of it. Or you can also reach out to my colleague, Segundi Chigani, if you need more information about how to connect your school with our courses, our curricula, our training, or with our equipment. Between the two of us, we can get all of your questions answered. But until we see you again on Thursday, we're hoping that you have a great rest of your day. If you're in the Chicagoland area, please, please stay dry. When they have to shut the power off at the Sears Tower, we know things are serious. So everyone, please stay safe. Enjoy that time that you're spending with your students and with your families at home. And we will talk with you all again soon. Bye-bye now.